Hello everyone. The topic for this segment is, as you see here, adoption of CMC technology in the organization. And this issue discusses what factors motivate the organization to adopt technology and what factors demotivate the organization to adopt technology, and what factors motivate some members to adopt technology while not others. There are different theories concerning such questions, and let's look at some of the theories now. The first theory introduced here is called the contingency theory, proposed by Gutek in 1990. It basically argued that the adoption and use of technology is a rational process. It's a process based on the fit between two things. One, the kind of technology, the attributes of the technology, and the communication requirements of the task or the organization. And different organizations obviously have different tasks. Financial institutions versus higher ed institutions, and governmental agencies versus non-profit organizations. Different organizations have different needs, so they adopt different technologies. So that makes sense. Another idea in this contingency theory is that the higher the equivocality of a situation, such as a non-routine or advantageous situation, the more complex is the communication, and thus the more complex CMC technology is needed to match that situation. What does this mean? Some situations are routine, such as answering a phone call, but some situations are very complex and non-routine. For instance, a customer comes to complain about something that's complex, and you have to talk to the customer. So as a result, that some technologies can match such complexity in human affairs, others cannot. And the argument is that the richer the situation, or the more complex the situation, the more complex the technology has to be. For instance, if the routine situation, perhaps email would suffice. But if it's a very complex customer complaint, face-to-face talking may be a better choice, or even video conferencing may be a better choice than just e-meeting. The next theoretical idea in this part is some empirical evidence that criticizes the contingency theory, such as by Steinfeld. And he believes that what determines the use and adoption of CMC technologies is not task requirements or the media attributes, but there are many other factors as listed here. Role of the organizational members, distance restraints, norms, media experiences, and symbolic meanings attributed to the media technology. Can you think of examples to illustrate one or more of these factors? For instance, social norms. If in one organization technology is celebrated, that's the norm, and technology is taken as a symbol of progress, it's more likely that members in that organization will adopt and use technology. Media experiences. How does that affect the adoption and the use of technology? And the more experienced you are with the technology, the more likely you will use technology. And people who don't have as much experience will hate technology, perhaps. For instance, generally speaking, technology is a new thing, and this is exactly why older generations do not adopt technology as widely as younger people. The younger people is called the native um, digitals, the digital natives. It's because of they're more experienced with technology. E.M. Rogers has the idea of multi-step flow theory, which means that the adoption and use of technology is not a monolithic thing, that all members in the organization adopt and use technology, the same technology at the same time, but rather different members within the organization adopt technologies at different stages with different paces. And E.M. Rogers conceptualized 5 different types of adopters during this progression. And these types are innovators, early adopters, the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards. So different people adopted technologies at different times. The organization's task is to leverage the influence of the innovators and early adopters and exert this influence upon the later adopters, so that the organization as a whole can make better use of technology. The next idea is the idea of adoption versus usage. And adoption is not equivalent to the actual use of technology. There is a gap between the two. As we know that there are all kinds of instructional technologies now flying all over the place. Jane, Camtasia Studio, Dreamweaver, Wimba Live Class, Wiki. The list is long. But how many professors, for instance, actually adopt these technologies in the actual teaching? Very few, perhaps. So obviously there is an existence of adoption. There's a gap between existence and adoption of technology on the one hand and actual use of technology on the other hand. On this campus, for instance, we do have Wimba Live Class, we have Wiki, many other technologies, but very few faculty members actually use them. In some sense, it's kind of waste. And the next idea is the social influence model by Faruk and others, proposed in 1990. And they argue that the behaviors and perceptions in connection with the adoption and use of technology are rather subjective. It's a socially constructed process. Again, this may be a similar idea to the norm idea previously introduced. That is, the social symbolic meaning attached to technology plays a big role. If in the organization technology is celebrated, it's treated as symbolic of progress, people will adopt technology. Among young people, for instance, now, possession of technology is considered as a cool thing, right? That's why we spend money to buy iPhone, watch YouTube, and listen to iTunes, whatever, to be cool. So this segment introduced some theoretical models concerning the adoption and the use of technology, and summarized some empirical evidence in connection with those theoretical ideas. Here's a little quiz for you at the end of this little introduction.